It was the summer of 2023 when five friends David, Jessica, Matt, Rachel, and Sarah decided to reunite for a camping trip in the dense, ancient woods of Blackwood Forest. The forest, infamous for its eerie atmosphere and spine-chilling legends, was a place they had always heard about but never dared to explore. This summer, however, curiosity got the better of them. David, the adventurous leader of the group, had organized the trip. He believed that facing their fears head-on would make for an unforgettable adventure. Jessica, his girlfriend, was skeptical but trusted his judgment. Matt, a thrill seeker, was excited by the prospect of a scare, while Rachel and Sarah, though hesitant, decided to join for the sake of the group. As they drove deeper into the forest, the dense canopy of trees blocked out the sun, casting long, ominous shadows across their path. The air grew colder and an uneasy silence settled over them. Despite their apprehension, they set up camp near a small clearing surrounded by towering trees and a seemingly endless expanse of wilderness. Night fell quickly in Blackwood Forest. The group gathered around the campfire, sharing stories and laughter to stave off the growing sense of dread. David, ever the storyteller, recounted the legend of the Whispering Woman, a spirit said to haunt the forest, luring unsuspecting travelers to their doom with her haunting whispers. According to the legend, the Whispering Woman was a vengeful spirit of a woman who had been wronged and left to die in the forest centuries ago. Her soul, unable to find peace, wandered the woods, seeking revenge on anyone who dared to enter her domain. As David finished the story, an unsettling silence fell over the group. Crackling of the fire and the distant hooting of an owl were the only sounds that broke the stillness. Suddenly, a cold wind swept through the camp, extinguishing the fire and plunging them into darkness. Jessica let out a gasp as she felt a chill run down her spine.
Did you guys hear that?
She whispered, her voice trembling. The others strained their ears, but all they could hear was the rustling of leaves. Dismissing it as the wind, they decided to turn in for the night, each retreating to their tents with a sense of unease. In the dead of night, Sarah was jolted awake by a soft, barely audible whisper. At first, she thought it was her imagination, but the whisper grew louder, more insistent. It seemed to be calling her name.
Sarah. Sarah.
Terrified, she clamped her hands over her ears, but the whisper continued, relentless and unyielding. She stumbled out of her tent, hoping to find solace in the presence of her friends. To her horror, she saw a shadowy figure standing at the edge of the clearing, shrouded in darkness.
Sarah, come to me.
The voice was soft, almost seductive, and she felt an inexplicable urge to obey. Her legs moved of their own accord, drawing her closer to the figure. Just as she was about to step into the shadows, David grabbed her arm, pulling her back to safety.
What are you doing?
He hissed, shaking her out of her trance.
I heard her.
Sarah stammered, her eyes wide with fear.
The Whispering Woman, she was calling me.
David scanned the perimeter, but the figure had vanished. He guided Sarah back to the campfire where the others had gathered, equally disturbed by the commotion. The next day, the group decided to stay close to camp, hoping that daylight would dispel their fears. However, the oppressive atmosphere of the forest seemed to weigh heavily on them. The once inviting woods now felt like a labyrinth of nightmares. As they explored the area, they stumbled upon an old, abandoned cabin hidden among the trees. The cabin was decrepit, its windows shattered, and the door hanging off its hinges. Against their better judgment, they decided to investigate. Inside, they found a room filled with faded photographs and tattered journals. The air was thick with dust, and the floorboards creaked under their weight. Jessica picked up one of the journals and began to read aloud. The journal belonged to a woman named Eliza Blackwood, who had lived in the cabin over a century ago. Her entries detailed her descent into madness after the death of her child and her husband's betrayal. Eliza wrote of hearing whispers in the woods, urging her to seek vengeance. Her final entry was a chilling confession she had embraced the darkness, becoming the Whispering Woman. As Jessica finished reading, a loud bang echoed through the cabin. The door slammed shut, and the windows rattled violently. Panic set in as they realized they were not alone. Over the next few days, the whispers grew more frequent and malevolent. Each member of the group experienced terrifying visions and encounters with the Whispering Woman. She taunted them, playing on their deepest fears and insecurities. Matt saw his reflection twist and contort in the river, turning into a grotesque version of himself. Rachel felt an invisible hand grip her throat, choking her while she slept. Jessica was haunted by the vision of Eliza's dead child, who would appear at the edge of her vision only to disappear when she turned to look. David, determined to protect his friends, searched for a way to break the curse. He scoured the journals for clues and found a passage that hinted at a ritual to banish the Whispering Woman. The ritual required a personal item from each of them and a sacrifice under the light of a full moon. The night of the full moon arrived and the group gathered in the clearing. They placed their personal items in a circle and began the ritual, chanting the incantations from the journal. The air grew colder and the whispers intensified, swirling around them like a storm. As they completed the ritual, a deafening silence fell over the forest. For a moment, it seemed as though they had succeeded. But then the ground beneath them began to tremble and a dark figure emerged from the shadows. The Whispering Woman stood before them, her eyes burning with hatred.
You think you can banish me?
She hissed, her voice a cacophony of torment. David stepped forward, holding a lantern aloft.
We know your story, Eliza. We know your pain. But this ends now.
The entity let out a blood-curdling scream and lunged at them. The group held their ground, reciting the final lines of the incantation. The light from the lantern grew brighter, enveloping the Whispering Woman in a blinding glow. For the final ear-piercing wail, the entity was pulled into the light and the forest fell silent. The oppressive atmosphere lifted and a sense of peace settled over the clearing. The next morning, the group packed up their camp, eager to leave Blackwood Forest behind. They felt a mix of relief and sorrow, knowing they had freed Eliza's tormented spirit, but also haunted by the memories of their ordeal. As they drove away, David glanced back at the forest, a sense of foreboding lingering in his mind. The Whispering Woman might have been banished, but the darkness of Blackwood Forest was far from gone. Years later, the friends rarely spoke of their experience in Blackwood Forest. Each had moved on with their lives, but the memories remained, a constant reminder of the horrors they had faced. One evening, as David sat by the fireplace, he heard a familiar whisper. His blood ran cold as he realized the Whispering Woman's curse was not broken but merely dormant, waiting for the right moment to return. The haunting of Blackwood Forest was far from over, and the whispers would continue to echo through the ages, a chilling reminder of the darkness that lurked within.